I knew the trip was a mistake the moment the doorman smiled at us like he could already tell which one of us truly belonged there and which one was only pretending. Even so, I stepped out of the car with my chin up, sunglasses on, and one hand wrapped around the handle of my suitcase as if I had checked into five-star hotels my entire life. My closest friends spilled out behind me laughing, their perfume and bright voices floating through the heat of the late afternoon. And for one shining second, I let myself believe this weekend would be everything they promised. They had called it a reset, a girls' getaway, a chance to celebrate the fact that all of us had somehow survived another terrible year. They said I needed it most. They said I was always the one saving everyone else, always the one answering late-night calls, always the one covering the check, always the one pretending not to notice when kindness turned into expectation. They told me this weekend was for me. I wanted to believe them so badly that I ignored the little knot tightening in my stomach as I stared up at the gold letters above the revolving doors of the Royal Imperial Hotel. Still, when the concierge led us upstairs and opened the door to our suite, even my worries paused. The place was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city in a sweep of silver towers and distant water. Chilled champagne waited in a bucket on the dining table beside strawberries and white roses. Designer shopping bags sat artfully arranged near the couch, as if a stylist had prepared the room for a magazine shoot. The bedrooms were enormous, the bathrooms lined in veined stone, the sheets on the beds so crisp they barely seemed real. My friends threw themselves across the furniture and laughed like we had won something grand. One of them handed me a flute of champagne. Another said, "See? Didn't we tell you? You deserve this." That was when I noticed the looks. Small, secret things, eyes meeting over my shoulder, bones tilted away when I walked closer. A laugh that cut off the moment I entered the conversation. First, I told myself I was being oversensitive. I had been under pressure for months. My father's business troubles had turned every family dinner tense. My inbox was full of unpaid invoices and requests from people who only remembered me when they needed something. Maybe I was bringing too much suspicion into a weekend that was supposed to heal me. But the feeling remained, light as dust in my lungs. Something in the room had shifted. My friends were here with me, yet not fully with me. An hour passed, and the room that had looked so luxurious began to feel staged. Like an expensive set after everyone else had gone home. I checked the closets. Empty except for my things. I checked the bathroom counters. Empty except for my makeup bag and perfume. I walked into the living room and stared at the designer shopping bags near the couch. 2 of them were gone, though were the shoes one friend had left by the door. I opened the suite safe, suddenly breathless, and found the envelope of cash I had tucked there missing. Not all of it, just enough to feel deliberate. My pulse began hammering hard enough to hurt. I rushed downstairs, still wearing the dress and heels, one hand clutching my phone, the other shaking so badly I could barely keep hold of the elevator rail. Reception. The young man behind the desk looked at me with such careful politeness that fear sharpened into something worse. Shame. He checked the screen, then called over the manager, a silver-haired man whose expression was trained into sympathetic neutrality. He spoke softly, almost kindly, as if he had delivered awful news many times before. My friends, he explained, had checked out of the suite several hours ago. I corrected him automatically, saying that was impossible, that we were all staying there together, that my things were still upstairs. He glanced at the monitor again and confirmed that although I remained registered as the primary guest, the others had requested luggage assistance and departed. The incidentals, the room extension, the private salon booking, and additional purchases from the hotel boutiques had all been charged to the card on file. My card. I ran back upstairs, desperate to believe there had to be some mistake, some explanation that would restore the shape of the world I understood. Instead, I found absence everywhere. The watch my grandmother had given me, gone. My emergency envelope, gone. My cosmetics case, emptied of the expensive products I had splurged on for this trip, gone. Even the shawl I had draped over the chair was missing. It was not random theft. It was selection. Calculation. They had taken what could be sold, what could inconvenience me, what would leave me off balance. And they had done it smiling. I sat on the bed and called my best friend again and again until the ringing stopped feeling like hope and became self-harm. When she did not answer, I sent message after message, each one more frantic and less dignified than the last. Where are you? Is this a joke? Please tell me this is some misunderstanding. Why are you doing this? Did something happen? Answer me. I watched each text fail into silence. No bubbles appeared. No explanation arrived. There is a special kind of humiliation in realizing that the people you defended for years do not even think you deserve a lie. I somehow gathered what remained of my things and took the elevator back down because I could not bear to stay alone in that suite another minute. The lobby had darkened into evening glamour. New guests arrived in polished cars. Couples moved toward the restaurant in quiet wealth. The pianist had changed melodies. Everything in the hotel continued with smooth, expensive certainty, while I sat on a velvet chair near a column and tried not to fall apart in public. I failed. Tears slid down my face faster than I could wipe them away. My throat burned. I kept my head lowered, staring at the blurred marble floor through a curtain of hair, aware of footsteps passing, voices dipping, eyes skimming over me with curiosity or discomfort. No one asked if I was all right. At a place like that, distress was either handled privately or ignored altogether. Black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop in front of the hotel entrance. Its paint caught the light like liquid ink. Before I fully absorbed the sight, a second one appeared behind it. Then a third. Then another. Within moments, the driveway was filled with dark, immaculate luxury cars stretching in a line that looked less like transportation and more like a declaration. Doors opened in practiced sequence. Men in black suits stepped out first, each of them broad-shouldered, alert, wearing the kind of expression that warned the world against mistakes. They moved quickly but without visible panic, taking positions with disciplined precision until the entrance was framed by a human wall. The rear door of the central Rolls-Royce opened, and a man stepped out. He was taller than the guards, dressed in a black suit that seemed cut directly onto him, dark shirt open at the throat, no tie. No visible effort wasted on ornament. His hair was swept back from a strong face that might have been handsome in another context. Though handsome felt too soft a word for him, there was a scar near one eyebrow, silver against olive skin. He wore black sunglasses despite the falling evening. Yet somehow I still felt the force of his attention as he stood beneath the hotel lights. Every instinct in me said he was dangerous. Not the reckless kind of danger that shouted. The controlled kind, the kind that had no need to prove itself because everyone else already knew. He spoke briefly to one of his men, then turned toward the entrance. For a moment his head angled. And I had the strange sensation that he was not admiring the architecture or checking security or acknowledging the staff rushing to welcome him. He was searching. The revolving doors spun. The manager bowed himself nearly in half. The guards shifted to make space, and then the man stepped inside. The lobby seemed to tighten around him. People did not exactly move out of his way. They simply found themselves no longer standing where he needed to walk. He removed his sunglasses as he crossed the marble floor, and that was when I truly saw his eyes. Dark, sharp, attentive in a way that felt almost invasive, as if he missed nothing and forgave less. He should have looked at the manager. He should have gone toward the private elevators, or the reception desk, or whatever suite such a man occupied. Instead, his gaze swept the room once and landed on me. Something changed in his face. Not softness. Not exactly. But the hard, unreadable mask he wore shifted just enough for me to see a flash of something unexpectedly human. Recognition, maybe, though I was certain we had never met. Or anger, but not at me. He altered direction without hesitation, and walked straight toward the velvet chair where I sat clutching the remains of my dignity with both hands. My first instinct was to stand, but my legs would not cooperate. The guards paused several feet away, forming a perimeter that somehow looked casual and absolute at the same time. I felt the curiosity of the entire lobby turning toward us, but all of it blurred when the stranger stopped in front of me. He looked down at my tear-streaked face, at the cracked phone in my hand, at the small pile of luggage by my feet. Then, to my shock, this man who seemed built entirely from menace bent one knee and lowered himself until we were nearly eye level. "Who made you cry?" he asked. "Nobody," I said automatically. His gaze dropped to my luggage, then to my nearly empty tote bag, then back to the tears still drying on my face. He did not look convinced. Nobody leaves a woman alone in a lobby like this with that expression on her face. I wiped at my cheek and tried to gather myself. "Oh, it's not your problem." One corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "Oh, it became my problem when I walked in and saw you crying in my hotel." I blinked. "Your hotel?" The manager, suddenly appearing at his shoulder like a nervous shadow, confirmed it with a stammering explanation about ownership interests and private residence floors. The information slid past me. All I could focus on was the way the stranger never took his eyes off me, as if he were waiting for me to choose whether to lie or speak. My friends left. I heard myself say, because some part of me was too exhausted to keep holding the whole thing alone. They charged everything to me and disappeared. Names, he said immediately. I frowned. What? What? Your friends. Give me their names. There was no hesitation in him, no polite disbelief, no suggestion that maybe there was another side to the story. He accepted my pain as fact the moment I offered it. Oddly, that almost made me resist. Why? Because people who make you cry in my lobby should explain themselves. A bitter laugh escaped me. Or you can just order the world to fix itself. No, he said. But I can ask the right questions. I should have been frightened enough to walk away, except I had nowhere to go. My wallet felt too light. My phone was almost dead. My friends had vanished with the casual ruthlessness of professionals, and I was sitting in the center of a luxury machine that had already made it clear kindness was not included in the room rate, though when he repeated the request, more gently this time, I gave him the names. He listened once and seemed to memorize them. Something in his expression hardened by a degree so slight another person might have missed it. One of his guards stepped forward at a tiny motion from his hand, received the names in a low murmur, and disappeared. "Well, you shouldn't be alone tonight," the stranger said. I almost laughed again, but it would have come out hysterical. "I'm managing." "Oh," he said, not unkindly. "You are surviving embarrassment on adrenaline." "That is not the same thing." Heat flared in my face. The accuracy of the statement stung. "I don't need pity." His eyes narrowed, not in offense but concentration. "Good. I have none to offer." Fine. He straightened to his full height, making the space around him feel even more charged. "What I can offer is a secure suite, food, and time for my people to determine exactly how much damage has been done." "Why would you do that?" He studied me for a long moment, and in the silence I became acutely aware of the entire lobby pretending not to watch. "Because once," he said, "I saw someone I should have protected standing alone after betrayal. I did nothing. I do not intend to repeat that mistake." The answer was so unexpected that it knocked my suspicion sideways. It was still suspicion, still fully alive, but now tangled with curiosity. "Well, you don't even know me." "No," he said. "No," he said. "But I know what abandonment looks like." I should have refused him. Every warning story my mother ever told me rose up at once. Men with power always want something. Men who solve problems create debts. Men who arrive surrounded by guards and expensive cars do not spend their nights rescuing strange women without a price. Yet, while those instincts argued, another fact remained simple and brutal. I could not afford to ignore help because I was too proud to accept it, not when the hotel bill alone might ruin me. Still, fear kept me sharp. "If I say no?" He inclined his head toward the doors. "Then my men will remain outside to ensure nobody approaches you while you arrange whatever you need. You will still have the room you are due until midnight. I will not force anything." It surprised me more than the offer had. Powerful men usually announce themselves by removing choice from others. He was placing choice directly back into my hands. Before I could answer, the hotel manager returned with a folder and a face carefully arranged into apology. He addressed me, but his body language belonged to the man beside me. The updated charges, he explained, were now even higher than originally estimated because additional services had finalized, including a private shopping consultation and transportation package. I felt my vision blur around the edges. The stranger took the folder from the manager, scanned a page, and asked one crisp question about authorization timestamps. The manager swallowed. Quiet exchange followed, full of terminology I barely processed. Then the stranger removed a black card from his inner jacket pocket and handed it over. "Settle it," he said. "Oh no," I blurted before the manager could move. "Don't do that." Both men looked at me. I hated how small my voice sounded in that enormous lobby. "I'm not taking your money." His attention returned fully to me. "You are not taking anything. I am correcting what happened on my property. I can owe you like this." A shadow of impatience touched his face, but it was directed at the situation, not at me. "Well, you don't need to owe me anything." People say words like that all the time without meaning them. He said it like a principle, like an old wound shaped the sentence from within. I wanted to reject it, Yet exhaustion made honesty easier than pride. I don't know how to trust this. Then don't trust it yet, he replied. Accept the shelter. Keep your suspicion. That answer, more than any polished reassurance, made me believe he might actually be sincere. He instructed the manager to move me to a private residence suite on a secure floor. He spoke with the efficient authority of a man used to obedience. Within minutes, someone brought a key card in an embossed holder, another person retrieved my remaining luggage, and 2 female staff members appeared as if conjured, ready to escort me upstairs. I turned back toward him before they could lead me away. "What's your name?" I asked. He paused. He paused. He paused. Adrian Romano. The name struck me with delayed force. I knew it. Everyone in the city knew it, at least in whispers. Romano ported luxury, private security, real estate, shipping, depending on which rumor one believed, philanthropy at the top and blood in the foundation, the kind of family whose name appeared in business magazines and police speculation with equal frequency. My heart thudded once, hard. He saw recognition register. "Yes," he said calmly. "That Romano." I should have backed away. Instead, I felt an unsettling flicker of relief. His reputation was half true. Perhaps my awful friends had just chosen the wrong night to make me disposable. After washing my face and changing into the robe, I tried my best friend again. This time she answered. The sound of her voice almost destroyed me. She spoke like we had been mildly inconvenienced, not like she had detonated my entire sense of friendship. "There you are," she said. "Why have you been spamming my phone?" For a moment I could not speak. "Why did you leave me?" She sighed, actually sighed, as if I were being dramatic. "Don't start. We left because you were making everything awkward." I stared at the phone. Awkward. "You were always so intense," she snapped. She snapped. "Everyone was uncomfortable, and then you started getting emotional about the charges, like you don't know how group trips work. They charged everything to my card, because you said you'd handle the room. We figured you could sort the rest out. It's not our fault you made a scene." It's not our fault you made a scene. The cruelty of it was almost elegant in its precision. She had selected exactly the tone most likely to make me question myself. Might have worked too, if too many facts were not already laid out in front of me like evidence. "You stole from me," I whispered. On the other end of the line, a tiny pause. Then she laughed, short and brittle. "You were unbelievable. Stop acting like a victim." The suite door opened softly behind me. I turned and found Adrian stepping inside with one of his men. I had not heard them knock, which should have alarmed me more than it did. He took in my face, the phone at my ear, the way my hand trembled, and his expression sharpened. He lifted a hand in silent question. I could only nod. He came closer, and my former friend's voice spilled through the line loud enough for him to hear. "Honestly, you embarrassing us is the real issue here." Adrian's eyes changed. Something cold and certain settled into them. He asked, very quietly, "Is that the one who left you?" I pressed the phone tighter. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her again, one last time. "Because you were useful," she said, perhaps forgetting herself, perhaps angry enough not to care, when you never notice anything until it's too late. The line went dead. The room felt suddenly airless. Adrian held out his hand. "Give me the phone." I did, more out of shock than obedience. He passed it to the man beside him with brief instructions. Then he looked back at me, not touching, simply standing close enough for me to feel anchored by his presence against my better judgment. "My people have been monitoring irregular activity connected to your accounts for several days," he said. He said. I stared at him. "What?" "Not you specifically," he clarified. "A pattern. Your surname surfaced near transactions we were already watching. When I heard the name of your friend just now, I understood why." I sank onto the edge of the sofa. "I don't understand anything," Warren Will punched in front of me again, that same disconcerting motion of lowering himself rather than speaking down at me. But not all at once. Over the next hour, His security team moved with stunning speed. A woman named Lucia arrived with a tablet and the composure of someone who could dismantle a bank account before dessert. Another man brought printed records from the hotel. Adrian asked me for consent before they examined my recent transactions, which startled me enough that I nearly laughed. Consent from a man rumored to take cities apart when crossed. I gave it. What they found made my skin crawl. Charges on my card had not begun at the hotel. There were small test transactions from boutiques I had never visited, ride bookings I had never made, and reservations under variations of my name designed to seem legitimate if anyone glanced quickly. Someone had used my identification details to open a line of credit 2 months earlier. Hotel reservations in another district had been made under my account. An invoice for imported jewelry sat attached to an email address almost identical to mine, differing by a single character. It was not sloppy theft, it was scaffolding. Someone had been constructing a version of me on paper capable of committing financial fraud. I wrapped both arms around myself and fought nausea. Why would anyone do this? Lucia swiped through the tablet. Because a credible trail is more useful than stolen cash, she said. Adrian's jaw tightened. And because access is easiest through trust. I looked up at him. My friends? Your so-called friends were not improvising. They were instructed, and the sentence hit like ice water. Until then, part of me had still clung to the idea that greed alone explained the betrayal. Greed, envy, resentment, maybe. Petty motives, personal cruelty. But this was larger, colder, more organized. By who? He leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving mine. Oh. That is what we are confirming. But I can tell you this much tonight. Your family has ties, whether acknowledged or not, to businesses that overlap with a rival organization. Old alliances, investments, transport routes, inherited obligations. You may not be involved personally, but your name has value. And leverage. My family is not criminal. The denial came fast, automatic. He did not mock me. And let us say your family lives closer to certain shadows than you were ever meant to see. My father's tense silences, the calls he took in locked rooms, the sudden relocations of assets he explained as prudence. Memories began rearranging themselves in ugly new shapes. I wanted to reject all of it. Instead, I sat very still and felt the world tilt another degree. So they got close to me for information? I asked. Yes, and I never knew. Oh no. Humiliation rose again, but this time it turned inward. I'm an idiot. Adrian's response was immediate and firm. No, I laughed without humor. I trusted them with everything. Trusting someone is not stupidity, or feels close enough. His gaze softened by the smallest margin. The people who exploit trust are the fools, not the ones brave enough to offer it. I looked at him then, really looked, at the scar by his brow, the exhaustion buried deep behind his controlled expression, the restraint with which he seemed to hold violence at bay. Oh, you sound like you learned that the hard way. A long silence followed. I did. He did not elaborate. Yet something in the room shifted between us. Not intimacy. Not yet. But recognition. Two people standing on different sides of betrayal, and finding the distance between them smaller than expected. Later, when Lucia and the others withdrew to continue investigating, Adrian asked whether I had eaten. I shook my head. Hunger had become such a distant concept that I had forgotten my body existed below the collarbone. He picked up the sweet phone, ordered dinner, and to my surprise asked for the kitchen to send ordinary food rather than elaborate tasting plates. Oop. Bread. Pasta with nothing theatrical about it. You need steadiness, not spectacle, he said when he saw my expression. When the meal arrived, he stayed. I assumed conversation would return to threats and rival organizations and everything terrible unfolding around me, but instead he asked whether I always hated hotels. I told him only the pretentious ones. He said this one was absolute pretentious, and the straight-faced seriousness of the statement startled a laugh out of me before I could stop it. He noticed. The room seemed to notice. For the first time that night, something unclenched in my chest, pressed my lips together, Embarrassed by the sound of my own laughter after hours of crying, Adrian watched me over the rim of his glass, and a faint, almost disbelieving expression touched his face. "That," he said quietly, "is the first time I've seen you smile." I looked down at my plate because meeting his eyes suddenly felt too intimate. He met me while I was publicly imploding. True. Not my best introduction, or I've seen worse. Something mischievous, fragile, but real surfaced in me. From yourself or other people? His mouth curved very slightly. Both. The lockdown alarm began just after midnight. What's happening? I asked. No one answered at first. Adrian listened, then swore softly in Italian. The sound chilled me more than shouting would have. He turned toward me with deliberate calm that did not fool me at all. Stay away from the windows. My pulse spiked. Adrian, phone. A phone in his hand lit up with a message. He read it once, and something dark flashed across his face. He handed the screen to me. On it, from an unknown number, were 6 words: hand her over and walk away. Cold spread through my limbs. Me? He took the phone back. Yes, The room tilted again. Why would they, to pressure me, to reach your family, to control the narrative once they finish building it? And his voice remained level, but I could feel rage under it like steel cable pulled taut. They intended you to be isolated, ashamed, financially compromised, and easy to move. Instead, they found you in my lobby. I stared at him, horrified by the shape of the trap I had nearly fallen completely into. This is because of me, or no, he said. This is because someone mistook you for an easy target. I took a step toward him. Then I should leave. If they want me, I shouldn't stay near you. He looked at me as if I had suggested jumping into the sea to avoid rain. Well, absolutely not. Oh, you said they were pressuring you. If I disappear? You don't get abandoned twice. The words landed with such force, I forgot what I was about to argue. His expression did not soften after saying them. If anything, it hardened further, as though he had made some silent promise not only to me but to a ghost he still carried. The guard nearest the door spoke rapidly into his radio. Another moved to open a concealed panel behind a bookcase, revealing a narrow corridor I would never have guessed existed. The sight nearly made me laugh from sheer unreality. Secret passages now. Of course. Adrian, I said, voice thin, tell me the truth. Are they coming into the hotel? Yes. He reached for my hand before I could flinch away. His grip was warm, steady, decisive. On, you are coming with me. Adrenaline transformed everything. The elegant suite became a map of exits and risks. The warm dinner on the table turned absurdly irrelevant. I slipped into my shoes with shaking fingers while one of the female staff who had escorted me earlier appeared carrying a small bag with the essentials I had unpacked. Someone had prepared for emergency movement so routinely that even my toothbrush had made it into a grab bag. The thought should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel bizarrely safe. We moved into the hidden corridor just as something heavy thudded somewhere far below, followed by the unmistakable crack of glass breaking. I gasped. Adrian's hand tightened around mine. The passage was narrow, lit by recessed strips near the floor, descending behind the walls of the hotel through a maze designed for exactly this kind of extraction. 2 guards led. 2 followed. Adrian stayed beside me rather than taking the safer central position I suspected his men would have preferred. Why are you here? I whispered as we hurried down a flight of private stairs. His gaze flicked to me. Because if something happens, I need to see it first. That is not reassuring. It is not meant to be, but... Despite everything, a trembling half-laugh escaped me. Fear made honesty brutal. I am terrified. Oh, I know. Do you ever say comforting things? He considered it for one surreal second while guiding me around a turn in the corridor. Not often. That tracks. The corner of his mouth moved. Even in danger, he seemed incapable of offering false reassurance. Oddly, that steadied me more than sweet lies would have. We emerged into an underground garage I had not known existed, far below the public valet levels. Another black vehicle waited with engine running. More guards. More weapons discreetly hidden and not hidden enough. As Adrian opened the rear door for me, a sharp series of pops echoed through the concrete space from somewhere distant. Gunfire, muted by walls but unmistakable. I froze. His voice cut through the panic. Look at me. I did. Will you get in the car? You keep your head down. You do not open the door for anyone except me or Lucia. Understood? I nodded too fast. Say it. Understood. He helped me inside, then slid in beside me rather than taking another vehicle. The convoy reorganized as the car shot forward through a private exit gate and into the sleeping city. Only then did I realize I was still holding his hand. I tried to pull away in embarrassment, but he closed his fingers around mine once, firmly, before letting go on his own terms. Heat bloomed under my skin in spite of terror. When we reached the estate, dawn was only a pale suggestion behind the horizon. The gates opened onto a property so vast it seemed to generate its own silence. Cypress trees lined the drive. Stone walls glowed under carefully placed lights. The main house rose ahead in warm limestone and dark windows, elegant rather than ostentatious. I expected something colder, more theatrical. Instead, it looked lived in. Protected, yes, heavily, but still human. Inside, staff moved with discreet efficiency. No one stared. No one asked questions. A guest room had already been prepared. Adrian told me I should sleep for a few hours, but I knew from his face that sleep would not come easily to either of us. What happens now? I asked. Now, he said. The lies end. I did sleep, eventually, though only in shards. When I woke late that morning, sunlight stretched across unfamiliar sheets, and for one disoriented second, I almost believed the previous night had been a fever dream. Then I saw the borrowed clothes laid neatly over a chair, the fresh phone charger, the tray of breakfast by the window, and memory returned in a rush sharp enough to make me sit down hard on the edge of the bed. Lucia met me after I dressed. She walked me through hallways lined with art too old and expensive for me to comfortably look at, then into a library where Adrian stood beside a long table covered in documents, tablets, and photographs. He had changed into a charcoal suit. Fatigue shadowed his features. Yet if anything he looked more controlled than ever, as though exhaustion simply burned away everything known essential in him. Sit, he said. I obeyed, more because my knees felt unreliable than because of the command. Lucia began presenting findings with clinical precision, time-stamped card usage, messaging records extracted from cloud backups, CCTV stills from hotel boutiques, transfers from shell accounts into one held by a man already under watch for facilitating identity fraud. My friends' names threaded through it all like poison sewn into fabric. By the end of the presentation, there could be no doubt left. They had not only used me, they had coordinated the use. I thought I would feel rage. Instead, what arrived first was grief. It moved through me slow and devastating, the death of an imagined past. Every brunch, every birthday, every comfort after heartbreak, every night I thought we were laughing for the same reasons. Suddenly all of it looked suspect. How much had been real? Had any of it? My throat tightened. Were they always part of this? Lucia answered carefully. Not necessarily from the beginning, but at some point, yes. Adrian watched me with that steady, unnerving attention of his. He did not interrupt when the first tear slid down my face. He simply slid a linen handkerchief across the table into my reach. The gesture was so old-fashioned it almost undid me. My best friend, I whispered. She knew everything about me, her innocent. That is why they chose her, he said. I closed my eyes. Oh, I hate that I still want an explanation. You are allowed to want one. Oh, I'm never going to get a real one, am I? His silence answered before his words did. Not one that makes it acceptable. Later that afternoon, the calls began. My former friends, one by one, using blocked numbers, alternate numbers, numbers I barely recognized. I let the first few go unanswered. Then Adrian asked whether I wanted witnesses present if I chose to respond. It was such a precise, respectful way of framing it that I nearly smiled through the ache. Yes, I said. Witnesses. So, when I answered at last, I did it in the library with Adrian leaning against the desk, and Lucia recording quietly from the corner. The voice on the line launched straight into tears and excuses. She said things had gotten out of hand. She said they had been pressured. She said she had never meant for me to be in danger. She said the money could be returned eventually. She said people were threatening them too. She said friendship should count for something after all these years. I listened until my chest stopped hurting and began to feel strangely empty instead. "Did it count when you left me crying in that lobby?" I asked. Silence. "Did it count when you used my name?" More silence. Then a fresh wave of begging. They always know how to beg once exposure arrives. Another former friend called next, voice shaking, swearing she had only gone along because she was scared. Third tried anger first, then panic when I did not bend. Each conversation stripped away another layer of whatever tenderness I still carried for them. By the end, I understood something terrible and clarifying. Forgiveness and access were not the same thing. Mercy did not require reunion. Adrian seemed to sense the moment that understanding settled in me. After the last call, when I placed the phone face down and stared at my own hands, he asked, "Do you want them gone from your life?" It should not have been a difficult question. Yet it was, because finality always sounds simple right up until you touch it. I thought of birthdays, aired apartments, whispered secrets, drunken promises, the version of myself that had once believed these women would stand beside me at every important threshold of my life. Then I thought of the lobby, the bill, of the evidence on the table, of the message ordering me to be handed over. "Yes," I said. My voice barely shook. "I do." He nodded once. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just recognition. "Then they are gone." He could not erase history. The way he said it made me feel that the future had just been defended. I screamed at him. I cried. I asked questions he could not or would not answer. Adrian stayed out of the room until I asked him in. When he entered, the temperature changed so noticeably that my father straightened like a man aware the cost of lying had just increased. It should have bothered me to rely on Adrian's presence that way. Instead, it felt natural. That terrified me more than anything, because danger from enemies is easy to identify. Attachment is harder, especially when it grows toward a man built from contradiction. We spoke one night on the terrace outside the library, while the city glittered far beyond the hills. I had wrapped a blanket around my shoulders against the cool air. He stood at the railing, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, forearms marked by pale old scars I did not ask about. "Why did you really stop for me?" I said at last. He was quiet so long I thought he might not answer. Then he said, "My sister was left alone once after something terrible happened to her." I turned toward him fully. He kept his eyes on the dark horizon. "She called me," he continued. I was angry with her. I let pride decide that I would answer later. His jaw worked once. Later was too late. Grief moved through the words like an underground current. I did not need every detail to feel the weight of it. "Oh, Adrian. She died believing she had no one," he said. "I will carry that to my grave." My chest ached. Without thinking, I stepped closer. "You couldn't have known." "Oh, no," he said. "But I know now." And he finally looked at me, and the rawness in his eyes stole my breath. "Oh, so when I saw you in that lobby, I knew exactly what I could not walk past. Are moments when sympathy turns into something far more dangerous because it arrives carrying understanding." In that instant, I saw not the rumors, not the cars, not the guards, but the man who had been built in part by regret and had chosen to make protection from it rather than pure cruelty. It did not absolve him of whatever darker things he had done. It simply made him real. I touched his arm lightly. He went utterly still beneath my fingers, as if even that small contact carried significance. "Thank you," I whispered. His gaze dropped briefly to my hand, then returned to my face. "You do not need to thank me for doing what should have been done, or maybe not." I swallowed. "I still want to." Something unspoken passed between us, warm and frightening. He stepped back first, not out of rejection but restraint. "You should sleep," he said. It was the most careful retreat I had ever seen. By the end of the week, enough evidence had accumulated to expose everything publicly if necessary. Adrian's men presented a final organized file: transaction chains, messages, hotel surveillance, and a trail leading back to intermediaries tied to a rival network. My friends had not masterminded anything. They had simply sold proximity to me and followed directions with appalling enthusiasm. Somehow that made it worse. The last call came on a rain-heavy afternoon. My former best friend again. Her voice was ragged now, stripped of arrogance. She begged me to remember our history. She said she had loved me once. She said she had made terrible choices under pressure. She said if I turned away completely, there would be nowhere for her to go. I looked through the library windows at the wet gardens beyond and thought about the woman who had sat crying in the Royal Imperial lobby while wealthy strangers walked past pretending not to see. Then I thought about the man who had crossed an entire marble room to kneel in front of her. "Oh, I hope you survive what you chose," I said quietly. "But you don't get to come back into my life." She started sobbing, promising change, promising repayment, promising anything. I ended the call before she could make herself small enough to feel innocent. When I turned around, Adrian was there. He had the unsettling habit of appearing silently even when not trying to. Today, though, there was gentleness in the way he watched me. "Are you all right?" He asked. I took a moment before answering. "No," I said truthfully. Then, because truth deserved its full shape, I added, "But I think I will be." He came closer. "That is enough." I studied him. The dangerous face, the careful eyes. The man who could command convoys and yet had kept placing choices in front of me, even when choice complicated everything. "Why do you keep doing that?" I asked. "Doing what?" "Letting me decide, giving me exits." Freedom. For the first time in days, a genuine smile touched his mouth, small and unexpectedly warm. "Because protection without freedom isn't protection." The words settled in me like something I had been waiting to hear without knowing it. Everyone else in my life lately had wanted leverage. My time, my resources, my loyalty, my silence, my usefulness. Adrian, the man I should have feared most, kept handing me the right to choose. I stepped closer until only a breath of space remained between us. And if I chose to leave? His eyes held mine steadily. I saw the answer before he spoke, and it undid me a little. "I would make sure you were safe," he said. "And I would hate it." My heart stumbled. "Why?" He looked almost annoyed with himself for the honesty that followed. "Because I did not expect to care what happened to you when I walked into that hotel." No polished seduction. No rehearsed line. Just blunt confession delivered like a wound acknowledged aloud. It opened something in me that had been closing for years, after everyone abandoned me. I said softly, "You were the first person who made me feel worth protecting." With his breath changed. "Barely." "Enough." He reached up with one careful hand and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, as if touching me too quickly might fracture whatever existed between us. "You always were," he said. I did not realize I was crying again until he brushed the tear away with his thumb. This time there was no humiliation in it. Only emotion too full to contain neatly. He looked at my face as if he were memorizing it under oath. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. I shook my head. Then he kissed me. "No one will make you feel alone again," he said against my hair. I believed him. Months later, I returned to the Royal Imperial Hotel on a night warm enough to smell orange blossom in the air. The city glittered exactly as it had the evening my life cracked open there, yet everything inside me had shifted. News of the fraud scandal had long since moved through the right channels. My former friends were gone from my world. My finances were repaired. My relationship with my father remained fractured but honest for the first time. And Adrian, impossible, dangerous, infuriating Adrian, had become not a rescuer suspended in one dramatic night, but a presence threaded through my days with stubborn care. He never tried to own me. That mattered. He sent security when threats lingered but withdrew it when they did not. He argued with me about small things and listened on important ones. He remained a man with darkness in his orbit. I never romanticized that away. But love, I learned, is not always finding someone untouched by shadows. Sometimes it is finding someone who knows exactly how dark the world can be and still chooses not to let it swallow you. When the convoy pulled into the hotel drive that night, heads turned just as they had before. One black Rolls-Royce, then another, The familiar performance of power unfolding under gold lights. The difference was that this time I stepped out beside him instead of crying alone inside. Cameras flashed somewhere beyond the barriers. Half straightened. The same manager approached wearing a look of profound respect that bordered on terror. I almost laughed remembering the girl who had sat in his lobby with swollen eyes and an overcharged card. Certain her life had been reduced to public humiliation. Adrian offered me his hand. I took it. The marble floors inside still gleamed. The orchids still scented the air. Wealth still moved through the lobby in practiced silence. Yet none of it felt bigger than me anymore. I saw the spot near the column where I had broken down that night, and for a moment the memory rose so vividly I could taste it. The salt of tears, the ache of betrayal, the numb disbelief of being left behind by people I had trusted with my unguarded self. Then Adrian's fingers tightened around mine, grounding me in the present. "You were quiet," he said. I looked up at him. Just remembering, he followed my gaze to the chair that had once held my humiliation. Understanding moved across his face. "Do you regret coming back?" I let the answer settle between us, full and certain. "I regret who I came here with the first time. Not what happened after." His expression softened, and in a place where everyone else feared him, he looked at me with something astonishingly tender. "Good." We took the private elevator to a suite high above the city, and when the doors opened, I found white roses waiting by the windows exactly as they had on the first night. But these were not staged by liars. They were placed by a man who noticed details and remembered which ones had once wounded me. A new memory laid itself gently over an old scar. I crossed to the glass and looked out at the city lights spreading below like promises written in gold. Behind me, I heard Adrian set down his keys, shrug off his jacket, and walk closer. His arms came around me from behind, warm and sure, his chin resting lightly near my temple. "That night was supposed to break me," I said softly. "Oh, it didn't. Oh, it led me to the man who refused to leave me there." He touched my cheek. The same gesture he had used in the library, the same care hidden inside dangerous hands. "And you," he said, "pulled me back to a part of myself I thought was gone." I smiled then, not because everything painful had vanished, but because pain no longer owned the whole story. I had been abandoned, humiliated, merely used as leverage in games I never chose. I had cried in a lobby while strangers looked away, and then a man wrapped in rumor and darkness had seen me, asked the only question that mattered, and meant it. When he kissed me beside the hotel windows, the city glittering below, and the memory of that first night finally losing its power, I understood the shape of my life had changed forever. My friends had left me crying at a luxury hotel, and expected the night to swallow me whole. Instead, it delivered a convoy of black Rolls-Royces, a ruthless protector with regret in his bones, and a love I never would have believed in if I had not lived it myself. I was no longer the woman abandoned in the lobby. I was the woman he chose.